All right, here's the first video that everybody is going to watch for our concept development for lesson 13 today. So it starts out with a problem that we are all familiar with, that we have all seen before. It says Jan has 4 pans of crispy rice treats. She sends half of the pans to school with her children. How many pans of crispy rice treats does Jan send to school? So your first strategy is to, of course, look for the numbers, the most important pieces, and what tells you what you're going to do. So that is 4 pans and half, those are my numbers, and the word of. Remember, if we're finding half of 4, then that is the same thing as 4 times a half, or 1/2 times 4. Either way, it's the same thing. And knowing what I know that 4 times a half is 2. But this is the same thing that we've been doing, and that's not what we're learning today. This is to get you thinking about the next step of our learning. So what if instead of 4 pans, she had 2 pans of crispy rice treats, and she sent half of the pans to school? That would look like this. 2 of 1/2. 2 times 1/2, and 2 times 1/2 is 1. Okay, but that's still not new learning. That's a review. What if she had 1 pan of crispy rice treats? Then that would be 1 times a half, and anything times 1 is always itself, so I know that 1 times 1/2 is 1/2. Still not new learning. So here's where I'm going to push you today. Let's say that she made a pan of crispy rice treats, but she ate half of it. So she had already eaten half, and now she's going to send half of that to school with her children. How is this question different than what you've seen before? Okay, now we're multiplying a fraction with a fraction, and we haven't seen this before. We've seen whole numbers with fractions, but not fraction with a fraction. So I want you to pretend that a piece of paper or your whiteboard or whatever is nearby you, even your computer screen, is the pan of the crispy rice treats. So imagine that you only have half of it. So shade in half of it, or look at half of it, or visualize half. Now, how would you split that half into half again? And what would you be left with if you had half of half? Okay, here's a visual for you. Here's my original pan of crispy rice treats. I split it in half. So this is what's left. I ate this part. I love these crispy rice treats. Okay, here's what I started with, half. Now, how do I find half of this? Well, I'm just going to cut it in half. So I cut it in half, and when I have half of my half, I have 1/4. And here's the thing about this. If you notice, I'm just multiplying straight across. Let me go back. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, let's try another one with Jan and her crispy rice treats. Let's say this time she only has 1/3 of the pan of crispy rice treats. She's eaten a lot of it, I guess. And now she's going to send half of that left over to school with her children. So how much is she sending to school? Well, first we need to identify the numbers. 1/3 and half of, and of means multiplying. So 1/3 times 1/2 are my numbers that I'm going to be working with. Now let's draw a picture to show. So I have my third. Here was my original pan of crispy rice treats, and now I've only left with this one. I ate the rest. Now I want to just send half of it to school with my kids, half of what's left. So I'm going to cut it in half. And I'm keeping half of it, and I'm sending half of it to school. So I'm left with 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. So multiplying straight across, 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 2 is 6. 1/6 is your answer. That would be 1/3 times 1/2. Okay, you try this one. Jan has 1/3 of a pan of crispy rice treats, and she sends 1/4 of the pan to school with her kids. How many does she have? So our first step, remember, is to underline the numbers. Okay. Now I'm going to write that in number form. So 1/3 times 1/4, and draw a picture if you'd like to, or you can use the other strategy of multiplying straight across, but unpause the video when you're ready to check your work. Okay, first I'm going to draw out 1/3. Here's my whole pan of crispy rice treats, and I ate this and I ate this, so this is what I'm left with. Now I want to send 1/4 of the pan to school with my kids. Well, I know that this is a half, so how can I keep cutting it to make them into 4 pieces? So I'm going to cut, and I'm going to cut again my halves into halves, and then I just want 1/4 of that. So this is the overlapping piece. I'm left with 1 out of all of these squares, and if you multiply straight across, 1 out of 12.